happening tonight in Vancouver.
Vaccine passports at border, fine. Vaccine passports other than border, it's unnecessary and disproportionate at this time.
As people think about getting back on a plane or driving across the border, concerns are being raised about digital vaccine passports. Why it's thought some Canadians could be left scrambling if they end up being implemented.
We're sick and tired of meaningless apologies.
The human rights complaint over this 2019 detention of a grandfather and preteen granddaughter has some big voices getting behind it and going after the Vancouver police.
They've been notorious for their racist attitudes, their values.
There are people from the community out with ropes trying to get them out.
A narrow escape for a driver after he off-roaded onto a Tawasin beach. The effort it took to pull it out and why police say no one should be doing that.
This is City News Everywhere.
Good evening, you're watching City News at 6. A wealthy BC couple accused of skipping the line and flying to Yukon for their COVID shots have each pleaded guilty to 2 counts of violating the territory's Civil Emergency Measures Act. Rodney Baker, the former CEO of the Great Canadian Gaming Corporation, and his wife appeared virtually in a Whitehorse courtroom this morning. The court heard the couple from Vancouver chartered a plane to Beaver Creek, where they were vaccinated at a mobile clinic before flying back to Whitehorse. The pair has been fined a total of $2,300 and will not go to jail. And BC nearing a big milestone in its COVID-19 vaccination drive. The number of those 12 and older who've received their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine is just shy of 75% of our population. Health officials saying 74.6% of all British Columbians and more than 76% of all adults have received their first jabs. The news comes as our province adds more than 100 cases, a second day in a row. Another 113 new cases are being reported in the last 24 hours, and 4 more people have died. 134 individuals are currently hospitalized, 41 of whom are in intensive care.
As we look towards some semblance of normalcy through travel, many Canadians are wondering if and how they'll prove they're fully vaccinated against COVID-19. With the agreement around border closure set to expire on June 21st, Ottawa is said to be in talks with the provinces and the territories about some type of vaccination passport. Discussions of that proof being digital, however, have some saying some Canadians could be in trouble.
There are going to be people, seniors, people with disabilities, people that have challenges for a variety of reasons, including poverty, etc., that are not going to have access to this.
Alex Stojovich is an immigration lawyer based in Vancouver. He says alternatives to digital passports must be considered and the rules should be universal.
Not every country is approving the same vaccines. So, I mean, what if you've had 2 of the Russian one? What if you've had 2 of one of the 2 Chinese ones that are out there? Does that mean you can't travel anymore? Or can you travel?
And then there are privacy and responsibility issues.
If the fallback is you need to have your digital vaccine proof on your phone, who's going to enforce the review of that? Is that going to be Canada Border Services? Because if it is Canada Border Services, then you're giving them your phone. And we've had Supreme Court of Canada cases now on what the limitations are of them to search your phone and have access to your password.
There are also concerns about whether vaccine passports will become a standard to access other services, according to Michael Bryant with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
It's quite another thing to ask people or require people to waive their privacy rights once they are in Canada, traveling between provinces or entering public facilities or using public services.
Some kind of a passport would be probably easier to expedite the process until we just start living with COVID. But then when you're talking about whether or not we get to go into businesses, I think that that's a right as an individual and as a citizen of a community. And I couldn't say that I would be in favor of that to access certain services.
The decisions are different around the world, so therefore, where can you go and where can you not go? What do you need and what don't you need?
I can see the sense in it, but it is slightly worrying that it might be the first step into something a bit deeper.
Ultimately, the hope is that no matter what Canada decides, that its people are protected.
We need to make sure that that data held internationally is kept secure and private and isn't used for other purposes and other agencies other than for its intended purpose of international travel.
At Vancouver International Airport, Ria Renouf, City News.
Not everybody wants to get back to filled arena to watch the Canucks.
Concerts, flights, and even packed grocery stores. They could all be sources of reopening anxiety, a reminder for all of us from experts as governments are slowly easing restrictions.
The party's over. We're going to come after you with every legal means available to us.
The Union of BC Indian Chiefs throwing their voices and legal might behind a human rights complaint of racism against the Vancouver police. They're supporting Maxwell Johnson. You see him here in this video from 2019 being handcuffed with his granddaughter. They were trying to get a bank account when staff at the BMO Bank in downtown Vancouver called police over their identification.
I had to keep calm and keep a good head on my shoulders for my granddaughter because she was crying. That was one of the hardest things to see. 12-year-old being handcuffed.
He says it's still hard to watch today. Former BC's children's representative and lawyer representing the Indian Chiefs says they were targeted.
These kinds of police acts where people are handcuffed and humiliated and mistreated and their rights are not respected, these are very serious issues that will not be tolerated.
Vancouver police are calling for the human rights case to be dismissed. In their written response to the complaint, they say they had reasonable grounds for their action and that they're colorblind.
There has been minimizing this incident. There has been denying this incident. There are forces at play in policing that seek to deny that racism exists. And that's most unfortunate because that doesn't create the conditions to address it.
The goal here is acceptance there's a problem and a plan to fix it.
When institutions can't own the racism and are not accountable for it, it continues to hurt people.
In this case, not even an apology. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip not holding back on his impatience and frustration that incidents like this continue to happen with this police force.
They've been notorious for their racist attitudes, their values, their contempt for people of color.
And wants to ensure that this doesn't happen again to another family. For City News in Victoria, I'm Lisa Yuzda.
The chief of the Tk'emlúps-Teshekwapic Nation is pleading with people wanting to offer support and condolences to follow COVID-19 safety orders. Nearly a month after the remains of 215 children were found on the grounds of the former residential school in Kamloops, she says some protocols are being ignored. Chief Roseanne Casimir says the community is feeling overwhelmed and unsafe, and those ignoring COVID safety protocols are not welcome at the site.
There have been non-stop activities since the news broke. We want to respect and to uphold the need to gather and to do ceremony. However, the Kamloops community members are only getting their second COVID vaccination shot. So with such high traffic in our community, we also want to ensure that pandemic protocols are being respected and that there are no outbreaks in the interior health region due to the activities within our community.
Every time I walk onto House of Common Grounds, speak in these chambers, I'm reminded every step of the way I don't belong here.
A young Inuk MP uses her powerful farewell speech to highlight the systemic racism on Parliament Hill.
We were trying to see what was going to happen with it, right? Like, I was thinking it was going to literally float away.
A truck driver in Tsawwassen had a close call Tuesday evening when he decided to off-road on this public beach and then got stuck as the tide came rolling in.
People started running back and forth trying to get anything they could use. Running from vehicle to vehicle looking for shovels or ropes or anything.
Angela Russell was at the beach with her boyfriend around 7:30 p.m. when she says they noticed two vehicles near the water. It was a group of men appearing to be taking pictures of their trucks. The beach is Tsawwassen First Nation land and vehicles are not allowed to drive on the sand. And that's for a very good reason.
The one vehicle drove off right towards the muck and the sludge and we knew it was going to happen.
The truck was stuck for hours, and it was a race against time to get it out, as the tide was quickly coming in. Delta police say when their officers arrived to help, the truck was already sunk to the axles on the beach.
You couldn't see the bottom of the vehicle. And when we were leaving, they had the truck, like the back end of it, up on the rocks almost, and the driftwood and the logs there. And you could see so much seaweed underneath it. It was just unreal.
Hours after the vehicle first got stuck, a large tow truck eventually arrived and was able to get it out. And even while shooting this story, I learned firsthand how sticky and muddy this beach can be. People wouldn't want to be off-roading on this beach. I was walking along what appears to be solid sand, and I sunk down to my ankles.
I can't believe they were actually, unfortunately, stupid enough to do something like that and cause so much harm to everyone around them, too. Trying to, everyone trying to help them. There's so many people that could have gotten hurt just trying to help them.
The driver was given a Tawasin First Nation violation ticket for harvesting or damaging resources on the nation's public land, as well as a Motor Vehicle Act ticket for careless operation of an off-road vehicle. In Tawasin, Ashley Burr, City News.
We now know what the next 5 years or so will look like as crews build Vancouver's new subway line to Arbutus. There will be delays, but it seems traffic will keep moving. Engineers plan to build vehicle decks to keep traffic going along Broadway, which is considered one of the busiest corridors in our country. Also, there won't be a cut and cover like there was during the Canada Line's construction, which really hurt local businesses. But street parking on Broadway from Main to Arbutus will be reduced for the duration of the project.
A hateful symbol found on an Edmonton mosque.
Response with love for all, hatred for none.
Ahead, why they're choosing to focus on the positive messages from community to fight Islamophobia.
Every time I walk onto House of Common Grounds, speak in these chambers, I'm reminded every step of the way I don't belong here.
A damning departure speech from Nunavut's Member of Parliament, highlighting the systemic racism pervasive on the Hill. After 2 years in Parliament, Mumalik Kagak has decided she doesn't belong.
Since being elected, I expect to be stopped by security at my workplace. I've had security jog after me down hallways, nearly put their hands on me, and racial profile me as a Member of Parliament.
27-year-old Kagak was elected to the House of Commons in 2019. Last year, she temporarily stepped aside from her duties after witnessing housing conditions in her territory during a tour. It left her depressed and overwhelmed. Now she feels the same way about Parliament.
I have never felt safe or protected in my position, especially within the House of Commons. Often having pep talks with myself in the elevator or taking a moment in the bathroom stall to maintain my composure.
Kagak wasn't the only MP to slam Parliament on their way out. Bloc Québécois MP Simon Marcel scolded the government for its treatment of Indigenous peoples and called Canada's first Prime Minister a racist. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh believes Kagak is redefining the face of Parliament.
Because for so long, parliamentarians have been older, white men, that's what the vision or that's what the assumption is. And so someone like Mumalik really shatters that notion of who a Member of Parliament is in a good way.
Kagak says her experience has taught her some lessons on how to act on Parliament Hill.
As a brown woman, do not move too quickly or suddenly. Do not raise your voice. Do not make a scene. Maintain eye contact. And don't hide your hands.
In Ottawa, Nigel Newlove, City News.
The head of Canada's Green Party is claiming recent attempts made by some members of the party to have her removed as leader are based on racism and sexism.
Even though I was given a strong mandate just over half a year ago directly from our members, a small group of councillors sought to force a vote of non-confidence in my leadership. They did so with no substantive consultation with the members they represent. They produced a list of allegations that were so racist, so sexist, that they were immediately disavowed by both of our MPs as offensive and inflammatory and contrary to party ethics, and I thank our MPs for that.
Annamie Paul, who was elected party leader back in October, did not reveal today what was on the list of allegations. She went on to say that the Liberal Party has played a role in these attempts to remove her from the top of her party and called out Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as well. Earlier this week, MP Jenica Atwin crossed the floor, leaving the Green Party to join the Liberals, allegedly over party disputes surrounding the Israeli-Palestine conflict.
The swastika, a symbol invoking hate, found spray painted on an Edmonton mosque Tuesday. But the Imam of Batul Hadi prefers to focus on the cards and flowers dropped off, saying some arrived at the mosque following the terrorism attack in London, Ontario, killing 3 generations of one family. Neighbors looking to show the local Muslim community they are loved.
Thankful to our neighborhood, and we believe most of Canadians, they have this kind of gesture and love and sympathy.
Edmonton Police Hate Crimes Unit is being consulted on the case, but police believe the symbol may have been there since as early as April, when similar looking vandalism showed up in the Otwell neighborhood. I want to give you an idea of how this symbol went unnoticed for some of those attending the mosque. I'm standing here across the alley on an elevated driveway from a neighbor's perspective, but if I walk into the actual alley, you can see it's no longer in sight, and they only knew about it once neighbors alerted them.
We have 2 pandemics that going on right now, COVID-19, of course, and the public health considerations and racism and the impact that racial discrimination has on communities.
Hate crimes researcher Irfan Chaudhry says yes, there have been more reported hate crimes and racism in recent months and years, saying it was rising before COVID-19, but the past year and a half have had an impact.
On social media, we have likely just kind of stayed within our own filter bubble, whatever side of the spectrum we might be. And I think what makes that even more pressing in the context of COVID is it reaffirms biases we may have or hold around certain groups. If you don't have a counter narrative to challenge that, you might buy into it.
There is a section of the criminal code relating to mischief on religious property that brings harsher sentences. While at the mosque,
Our holy book, Quran, that repel the evil with your good words and good actions. So we believe in that.
They will continue to spread the message written on the front of their building: love for all, hatred for none, and are just waiting on police to finish their investigation to clean up this hateful marking. In Edmonton, Carly Robinson, City News.
Not everybody wants to get back to filled arena to watch the Canucks.
If the thought of parties, concerts, and getting onto a packed flight is making you nervous, it's perfectly normal and you're not alone, according to a UBC psychologist who says many are feeling reopening anxiety. His advice: be patient, because not everybody is rushing to get back to normal.
And thus not make assumptions that everybody's going to be as comfortable as you are. We shouldn't judge people. We have no idea of the different experiences they've had over the last year and a half, nor about those dispositional differences.
Dr. Azim Sharif explains those differences are personality dispositions, and they're partly genetic. Some people take more risks and lean towards openness. Others are sensitive to threats. One Vancouver councillor notes anxiety is fear of something that can happen in the future.
Drawing on resources. So if somebody really loves music or friends or whatever it is, like putting music in the first time you go back to the grocery store, for example, or bringing a friend or something to help you stay present can be really, really helpful.
Also, experts advise it's up to each individual to set personal and professional boundaries as we return to some semblance of normalcy.
We need to be mindful that not everybody's in the same boat right now. If we have people who in our family who are going through cancer treatments or elderly people who are not yet comfortable, it's okay to say no to going to that family gathering.
BC entered stage 2 on Tuesday, but a recent Leger poll found more than half of Canadian respondents felt somewhat anxious about going back to their pre-pandemic lifestyles. Dr. Sharif says external threats have changed cultures before.
On the other hand, there are things like hugs, which I expect will roar back eventually once people feel comfortable. I don't think this is going to have a lasting change on people's willingness to touch each other.
In Vancouver, Crystal Adaris, City News.
Royal Caribbean International postponing one of the highly anticipated first sailings from the U.S. since the pandemic began. 8 crew members have tested positive for COVID-19, and the company says all 1,400 employees aboard the Odyssey of the Seas were vaccinated on June 4th, but 2 weeks had not passed for their bodies to build protection. The ship was due to sail from Fort Lauderdale July 3rd, but has now been rescheduled for July 31st. Well, it's that time of year again, the unveiling of the P&E Prize Home. For the first time in its 87-year history, the Prize Home has been built off the P&E Fairgrounds in South Surrey. The 3,600 square foot 3-story home has 4 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms. It features a spacious home gym, media room, and open concept living with a walkout access to a private backyard oasis. The total value of the P&E Grand Prize package is $1.8 million. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks for watching and have a great night.